Seoul, 17th century. The palace corridors are silent, but whispers of betrayal and ambition echo in every hall. One woman rises, not just to the king's favor, but to a fate that history would never forget. Her name? Jang Hui-bin, consort, concubine, and perhaps the most infamous figure of the Joseon court. Today, we unravel her story, the scandal, the ambition, and the dark legacy she left behind. Stay with me as we dive into a tale of love, power, murder, and political intrigue, and how this centuries-old scandal still captures modern imagination today. How did a girl from modest origins navigate the deadly currents of court intrigue to reach the pinnacle of power? In a palace where every glance and whisper could tip the balance of life and death, one woman's ambitions set her on a path that would alter Joseon history. Born Jang Ok-jeong in 1659, she came from a modest background. Her family held modest means, not destitute, yet far from the glittering ranks of the Yangbang elite. By age 15, she entered the palace as a court lady, hoping to serve, but destiny had bigger plans. In the rigid hierarchy of the Joseon dynasty, the king's favor wasn't just about beauty. It was a dangerous game of influence, gossip, and politics. Every smile, every bow, every whispered word could make or break you, or worse, end your life. Jang Ok-jeong's intelligence, charm, and ambition soon caught the eye of King Seok-jeong. Some historians suggest it was her boldness, others her beauty. Either way, she ascended from palace maid to royal consort, eventually earning the infamous title of Hui-bin, a rank of concubine. What began as quiet service in candlelit chambers would soon ignite into a storm that shook the throne itself. Jang Hui-bin's ascent within the Joseon court was not only the story of a woman's ambition, but the unfolding of a kingdom's factional wars. The Joseon dynasty was a crucible of rivalry, where the Noran, old learning, and Soran, new learning, factions battled for influence over the throne. Royal consorts were more than companions. They became living symbols of political alignment. In 1688, Jang Hui-bin gave birth to King Seok-jeong's first son, Yi-yoon. Contemporary records show that she was promoted to Sui and then to the rank of Bin, bearing the title He, meaning beautiful. Her elevation was more than personal triumph. It signaled victory for the Soran faction, who saw in her son the rightful heir to the throne. This sudden rise angered the Noran, who backed Queen Inhyeon and opposed any concubine's child sitting on the throne. The tension erupted in the Gisa Hwanguk of 1688, when Seok-jeong sided with the Soran, exiled Queen Inhyeon, and stripped her of her title. According to the annals of the Joseon dynasty, this upheaval shook the foundations of court politics. For Jang Hui-bin, it was a moment of unmatched triumph, but also the moment when powerful enemies fixed their gaze upon her. Despite the controversy surrounding Jang Hui-bin's rise, King Seok-jeong's affection for her remained steadfast. Her influence extended beyond personal favor. It was deeply intertwined with the political dynamics of the Joseon court. In 1688, her son, Yi-yoon, was declared the crown prince, further solidifying her position. This decision antagonized the Noran faction, which later supported Yi-geum, the future King Yeongjo, son of another royal consort, Seok-bin Cho. However, Seok-jeong's favor was not absolute. Over time, he grew disillusioned with the Nammin faction's increasing power and the perceived corruption within the court. In 1694, Seok-jeong initiated the Gapsul Hwanguk, reinstating Queen Inhyeon and demoting Jang Hui-bin back to her previous rank. This political upheaval reflected Seok-jeong's shifting alliances and his attempts to balance the competing factions within the court. But power in Joseon was never so easily extinguished. Demoted, yes, but not defeated. Hui-bin's presence still haunted the palace walls, but whispers had already begun. whispers that would soon return to drag Hui-bin into the abyss. In 1701, Queen Inhyeon fell gravely ill, and she died at the age of 35. Her sudden passing left the palace stunned. Some contemporaries believed it to be natural, while others, consumed by court gossip, whispered of darker causes. The annals of the Joseon dynasty record that Min Jin-won and Min Jin-hu, the queen's older brothers, went before the king. They claimed that they were fulfilling the queen's dying request to expose Jang Hui-bin's alleged sorcery. According to these accounts, Hui-bin was accused of constructing a shamanist altar within her residence. Allegations stated that effigies bearing the queen's name had been discovered, and that ritual acts had been carried out against the queen. Testimonies from her ladies-in-waiting, preserved in the annals, added to the suspicion. Some claimed that she ordered them to shoot arrows at a painted portrait of Queen Inhyeon 3 times a day, a symbolic act meant to weaken the queen. Others alleged that she had them bury dead animals in the gardens of the queen's palace, gestures interpreted as curses. Whether these practices were truly performed, exaggerated by enemies, or fabricated to bring her down, remains contested by historians. The annals describe King Seok-jeong as deeply shaken by these revelations. Despite petitions from the Soron faction to spare her, he declared that her deeds were too grave to pardon. On October 10, 1701, Jang Hui-bin was sentenced to die by poison, a method reserved for women of high rank. She was 42 years old. The records say Seok-jeong wept for her, torn between love and duty, for issuing the order. Her death was not the end of the scandal. In the aftermath, Seok-jeong decreed that no concubine would ever again be elevated to the status of queen, a law shaped by her shadow. Her rise and fall had rewritten the rules of royal succession. Her body was gone, but her image remained, etched in law, in lore, and in the dramas retold by centuries that followed. Even centuries later, Jang Hui-bin's story resonates. She has appeared in countless Korean dramas, often portrayed as either a villainess or a tragic figure. Her life also inspires modern true crime podcasts, academic papers, and discussions about gender, power, and morality. She's become a lens through which we examine how ambition and society clash, and how women's roles were historically constrained yet pivotal. Yet her tale is not locked in dusty annals. Even now, its echoes can be heard in the scandals of our own time. Jang Hui-bin's story isn't only a tale from the 1600s. It is a pattern that echoes across centuries. Hidden influence, contested legitimacy, and the fragile balance of power. In her time, whispers and silk-draped corridors shaped royal policy. In our own time, South Korea witnessed a parallel during the 2016 to 2017 scandal. According to rulings of the Constitutional Court, Choi Soon-sil, an unelected confidant, exerted unlawful influence over state affairs. The fallout was unprecedented. President Park Geun-hye was impeached, removed from office, and later convicted in court, marking the first time in Korean history that a sitting president was ousted by judicial process. The reach of power was tested again in the corporate world. In the same scandal, Samsung's Lee Jae-yong was convicted on charges of bribery and embezzlement. He served prison time before receiving a presidential pardon in 2022, a move the government described as being in the national economic interest. Much like royal pardons of the Joseon court, it reminded the public of how justice and politics can intertwine. The lesson is clear. Ambition alone does not make a villain. It is the system and the public's response that determines whether power is tolerated, punished, or remembered as a warning for the future. Jang Hui-bin's life is one of glory and tragedy, influence and danger. She rose from humble origins to the pinnacle of power, only to fall victim to the same system that elevated her. In the end, history remembers her as both a villain and a victim, a woman whose story continues to intrigue, terrify, and inspire. So, when we hear tales of ambition and scandal, we might ask, is the villain born, or is the system to blame? In Jang Hui-bin's case, perhaps both. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the intrigue and scandal of the Joseon court. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe and hit the bell icon to uncover more stories of history, crime, and ambition from Korea and beyond. Until next time, beware the palace corridors and the secrets they hold.